is a Chinese-Canadian man. He's 75 years old. He has 2 children from his first marriage, which ended in divorce. It was a bitter divorce, and Tom and Anne have never forgiven Cam for leaving their mother and for splitting up the family. His son Tom has been estranged from Cam since the divorce and the remarriage to Sally.
That Sally's a no-good gold digger. She just wants Dad's money.
Tom and Anne would like to be a part of their father's life, but they believe that Sally has poisoned their father against them. Sally is a non-Chinese woman 15 years younger than Cam. Her daughter from a previous relationship, Kate, was 10 years old at the time of her mother's marriage to Cam. Cam and Kate are very close. Cam has always been a very quiet and private man, sticking carefully to a daily routine. Sally noticed Cam's behavior changing over a period of time, but it wasn't until after Cam became disoriented while taking the bus that Sally became very worried, and she convinced Cam to go to see his family doctor, Dr. Huang, to make sure that everything was okay.
This diagnosis has been a real shock, Dr. Wang. Starting that medication has felt encouraging, like I'm doing something for myself. But Sally and I are wondering what more can be done about dealing with this illness.
Well, I would say that you should start planning for the future now, Cam. None of us can know exactly how rapidly your illness is going to progress, possibly very quickly, possibly not so quickly. Look, Cam, I'm just going to be blunt. I think you should be planning for the worst case scenario, which is that you have a relatively brief window of opportunity to put your plans in order before it becomes impossible for you to do so. I've just seen way too many people think that they can wait, and then it becomes too late. If it turns out that your symptoms progress more slowly, well, that's fantastic. You have the peace of mind of knowing that you're already prepared.
Prepared? Prepared for what?
Well, at a certain point in your illness, Cam, your thinking problems are going to make it difficult for you to make decisions that the law will recognize as valid. And this means a couple of things. It means that you won't be able to consent to or refuse health care or treatment. And it means that someone else is going to need to be authorized to manage your money and your property. Now, I really strongly suggest that you read over this booklet that's been prepared by the Alzheimer Society. It'll give you an overview of some of the things you need to think about getting in order. And it will also give you some very basic information about the different kinds of legal planning tools that can be helpful to you.
Should we see a lawyer?
Well, that would be sensible, I think, Sally. A notary might be able to help you also. But I really want to emphasize that before you do, you should just start informing yourself. These brochures, as I've said, from the Alzheimer Society are an excellent place to start. There are also other booklets in the Alzheimer Society series that can give you other kinds of information.
So become an informed consumer.
Well, that's right, Cam. I guess that's what I'm saying.
Cam and Sally visit a lawyer who Cam has frequently used in the past, Ms. Cohn. Cam tells her about his diagnosis of dementia.
Well, Cam, I wish we were meeting under happier circumstances, but I've got to say that I'm glad you came to see me so quickly. I see many people who've waited until it's too late.
Too late? What do you mean by too late?
Well, as your lawyer, Cam, I have an ethical responsibility not to execute or carry out any legal documents for you, such as a will, but also an enduring power of attorney or a representation agreement, any of the other documents you might want to talk about today, and we'll be explaining those in some more detail later. If I don't believe that you have the mental capacity to understand what you're signing.
Ms. Cohn is satisfied that Cam is capable of making the kinds of legal decisions that they discussed during the meeting.
Okay, Cam. First of all, do you have an up-to-date will?
I do, yes.
Well, Cam, that was made a long time ago. Remember, you wanted to be sure to include Kate. This will be your last chance to include Kate in your will. You wanted her to be cared for. Kate's Cam's stepdaughter. They're very close, you know, Miss Cohn.
Cam, are you interested in changing your will?
Well, I guess I'd like to look it over, see if I want to make any changes.
Well, I think what we need to do is set up an appointment for you next week to discuss the will, Cam. I'll need to see Cam alone for that discussion, Sally.
We're also interested in getting an enduring power of attorney for Cam. Right, Cam?
Well, what do you think, Ms. Cohn?
Well,
Come on, Cam. We just looked at that booklet last night from the Alzheimer Society, remember? We want to make sure that I can take over the finances when the time comes, Miss Cohn.
Sally knows to ask about an enduring power of attorney. With an enduring power of attorney, Cam can authorize another person, such as Sally, to manage finances or property on his behalf and to make some legal decisions.
I think an enduring power of attorney sounds like a sensible idea, Cam, but I really want to make sure that you understand you can appoint anyone you want to be your attorney. It could be Sally if Sally is the most appropriate choice, or it could be another person. What's really important, Cam, is that you choose someone who you feel has the knowledge and the experience they need to handle your affairs effectively. Now, Cam, you and I have known each other for a number of years now, and I understand that you have some quite significant holdings. So for you, a professional management company might be an option. Now, whatever you decide, it's very important that you think really carefully about this decision. It's a very important decision. And you need to make sure that you have all the information you need to make the best decision you can. One that will work for you, and also, Sally, one that will work for you. Now, we can talk about this further at your next appointment. Whoever you choose to be your attorney under a power of attorney is going to have some quite significant duties, Sally. And so that's why this is something for you to think about also, whether this is something you're really prepared to take on. Before making an enduring power of attorney, the following questions should be considered. Has Sally been provided with information about her duties as an attorney, including the fiduciary nature of this legal relationship? A fiduciary relationship requires that the attorney must act in the best interests of the donor. Does Cam understand and appreciate the full scope of the decision-making power that Sally will have over his affairs in her role as his attorney? Does Sally have the knowledge and experience required to carry out this role? Perhaps another person might assist Sally, possibly with regard to certain matters only. During their marriage, Cam has dealt with his own financial matters without Sally's input. If Cam wishes to make a springing power of attorney, he needs to consider how it will be shown that it has sprung, which means that Cam has lost mental capacity, and by whom it will be shown, by a doctor or by another person. Cam and Ms. Cohn will need to discuss this point carefully. Switching gears for now, Cam, have you thought about making a representation agreement?
Remind us about that one again, please.
Well, in a representation agreement, Cam, you could appoint a person to be your representative, and that person would be able to make decisions about your health care if and when you became unable to make those decisions for yourself. The representative could also make certain kinds of non-medical decisions on your behalf that we call personal decisions, such as where and with whom you would live.
I read in the brochure that there were 2 different kinds of representation agreements. It was a little complicated. Can you explain that some more?
Well, it is a little complicated, Cam. I'll go slow, and if you have any questions or you want me to clarify any points, please don't hesitate to ask. Now, there are indeed 2 different kinds of representation agreements. There is a standard representation agreement. We often call that a Section 7 agreement, and also a non-standard agreement, which is commonly referred to as a Section 9. Now, a lot of people find this language of Section 7 and Section 9 to be easier to keep track of than the standard, non-standard language. So that's how I'm going to be referring to them today. Does that make it easier for you to keep them straight?
Well, 7 and 9, I guess, is easier than that other language.
Okay, good. Well, a Section 9 agreement is going to give your representative a wider range of these healthcare and personal decision-making powers. So, for example, with a Section 9, your representative could consent for you to be admitted to a care facility, which they could not do with the Section 7. Now, Cam, because you are still in the early stages of your dementia and your symptoms have not progressed, you can still make one of these Section 9 agreements if you want to. So you'll remember when you first came to see me, I mentioned that I was glad you'd come so quickly after getting your diagnosis from Dr. Huang, and this is why. So you have more choices at this point about the kinds of appointments you wish to make. If your dementia was more advanced, you wouldn't be able to make one of these Section 9 agreements, and you wouldn't be able to make a will either or an enduring power of attorney. People in that situation can make one of these Section 7 representation agreements, however, and this allows their representative to handle routine finances for them. So these Section 7s are very useful for people who are unable to make an enduring power of attorney or unable to make a Section 9.
I just need you to back up a little bit here.
Okay.
I just want to make something clear. So what you're saying is the kind of representation agreement I can make kind of depends on how many marbles I've still got. If I have more, I can make a 9. 9 is more than 7. If I have fewer marbles, I can make a 7, less than 9.
Well, Cam, that's certainly a colorful way to think about it, and that's not the language I probably would have used, but if it helps you to keep it straight, that's great. Yeah. So a Section 9, you have more marbles. It also gives your representative more decision-making powers. Section 7 you make if you have fewer marbles. It also gives your representative less decision-making powers, with this exception of routine financial management, which your representative can have under Section 7. But that's because you wouldn't be able to make an enduring power of attorney.
Seems to make sense. Ugh.
Before proceeding with the representation agreement, Cam should think about how Tom, his eldest son, will respond to Sally's having final authority over Cam's health treatment. Should Cam himself become incapable of making decisions about that treatment? And also personal decisions, such as where Cam will live, if and when it is not in Cam's best interest to have contact with particular persons, and what kind of recreational or therapeutic activities Cam should participate in. Perhaps Cam, realizing the potential for family argument, is fine with it, and nevertheless decides to go ahead and appoint Sally as his representative. But the important point here is that Cam be aware of potential future difficulties for his family network, and talk them over with Ms. Cohn, together with possible ways that problems can be avoided or minimized. Now, I've got one more thing I wanted to tell you about, to take away and think about before you make any kind of a decision. And that is the advance directive, which is a new option in British Columbia.
Now, what's that about again? Tell us a bit more about the advance directive. It's different from the representation agreement, right?
It's very different from the representation agreement. If you had a chance to have a look at the Alzheimer Society brochure, you would know that people use advance directives to write down instructions about the kind of health care they want near the end of life that need to be followed by your health care providers. So in a representation agreement, you appoint your representative to make decisions on your behalf. The advance directive is a document that you write that contains instructions that need to be followed by doctors and other healthcare providers if a point comes when you can't make your own wishes known. Now, there are some exceptions to when healthcare providers need to follow your instructions. I won't go through those with you today, but that's outlined in the Alzheimer Society brochure, which I really recommend you read very carefully before you make any decisions.
So you're talking about, decisions like whether or not to pull the plug.
Oh, Cam.
Well, Cam, I'm glad that you brought that up. Many people think of phrases such as not wanting to be hooked up to machines or pulling the plug when they think about the kind of instructions they want to leave in an advance directive. But you have to realize those kinds of instructions are going to mean very little to a doctor who's actually treating you. And it's going to be very hard for them to follow instructions of that kind. So I think it's important for you to get some information about the kinds of healthcare choices and decisions that might actually need to be made. And you can refer to those appropriately in an advance directive if that's the option that you choose.
But if we choose a representation agreement, we don't also need one of these advance directives.
Well, that is true, Cam, but you need to know that many people do include a written statement of their wishes in their representation agreements. And that's to provide guidance to the person who needs to make those decisions for you.
Oh, wow, that's a lot to think about.
Well, you're right there, Sally. That is a lot to think about, and I can't stress enough how important it is to think very carefully about these matters, about the kinds of instructions you want to include, either in an advance directive or in a representation agreement, and make sure that those instructions are made on the basis of accurate information. You might want to talk to Dr. Huang about this, or again, I would direct you to the information that's available from the Alzheimer Society. Now, you have a number of very important decisions to make, and it's important to take your time in making them. So why don't we set up an appointment for next week? And in the meantime, you can consider all your options. If Cam does decide to create an advance directive, he needs to think carefully about what the benefit to him would be in doing so, as opposed to making a representation agreement. What are the issues he will need to think about in an advance directive and provide for?
Sally and Cam return to Ms. Cohn's office the following week. Sally waits in the reception as Ms. Cohn and Cam discuss Cam's will. Cam tells Ms. Cohn that he wishes to change his will to include his stepdaughter Kate as his beneficiary.
Okay, Cam, good to see you again today. I understand you wanted to make some changes to your will.
It's true what you're saying, Ms. Cohn. We've thought about it, Sally and I, and we've decided that really Kate, my stepdaughter Kate,
just 1 minute, Cam. You know this is your decision, not Sally's.
Well, that's true. I've thought about it then, and I want to have Kate in the will.
Okay.
I do.
All right. One thing I'd ask, though, is if you've thought about Tom and Anne, and if maybe you've discussed these changes with them.
Tom's a tough one. He's a tough nut. I don't know. I don't know if I want to talk to him about this sort of thing. He'll just blow up at me.
Yeah, well, again, it's your decision, it's not theirs, but it's something you just might want to talk to them about so they don't kind of find out at the last minute, if you know what I mean.
I'll think it over. I'll think it over.
Okay.
Then Miss Cone calls Sally in and they execute an enduring power of attorney, appointing Sally as the attorney. The enduring power of attorney is a springing power of attorney. That means that it will take effect only when Cam becomes mentally incapable, at which time Sally will be able to manage Cam's finances and make financial decisions on his behalf. This is at Cam's insistence.
I want to be in charge of my own money for as long as I can.
Cam and Sally agree that it makes sense to have a Section 9 representation agreement, authorizing Sally to do anything she considers necessary in relation to Cam's personal or health care. We may not feel this is the best choice for Cam, but in our system, Cam's choice, so long as he is considered to be mentally capable of making that choice, must be respected and given force.
Ms. Cone is aware of Cam's dementia diagnosis. Before making a new will for Cam, as for any of the other legal instruments discussed here, such as a power of attorney, representation agreement, or advance directive, Ms. Cone must be satisfied that Cam is mentally capable of doing so. A will is a complicated legal document. If Cam wishes to make changes to his current will, he must do so as soon as possible, before his dementia progresses. Ms. Cone also needs to be sure that Cam's desire to change his will to remember Kate, his stepdaughter, is truly his own choice and has not been made under the influence of his wife, Sally, at a time when Cam is vulnerable.
How are you, Sally?
I'm fine, Sarah.
Good. What could I help you with today?
Well, I'm hoping you can help me. I have to do something very difficult today, and I'm not quite sure how or where to start. As you know, my husband Cam has dementia, and his disease is progressing quite significantly. It's getting harder and harder for me to get him to leave the house, and many of the things he used to be able to do, he's no longer able to do. Very difficult time for him now.
I'm so sorry to hear that. I know we've been seeing much less of Cam this year.
Yes, getting him to the bank has been hard these past few months. He feels confused by so many of the things that he needs to do. He's even confused at home when I try to get him to look at banking statements or write checks to pay the bills. I'm afraid it's time to start using the power of attorney that Cam and I prepared with our lawyer a while ago.
I see. Well, I can certainly help you with that. Did you bring the power of attorney with you today?
Yes, I did.
Thank you. It's just going to take me a few moments to read this. I hope you don't mind.
Oh, not at all. I'm not in any rush. I should mention that I would also like to use this power of attorney today to make sure that I can pay Cam's accounts and have the accounts joint with mine so that I can help manage all his finances in the easiest way possible.
Well, we can certainly talk about how to use this power of attorney to help manage Cam's finances as soon as I've had an opportunity to read it. I'll just be a few moments, Sally. I can see that this was prepared by your lawyer, Sally, and everything seems to be in order. However, as I'm sure you're aware, this is a springing power of attorney, and in order for the bank to be able to use it, we will need to be able to have the 2 letters from physicians that are going to indicate that Cam is no longer able to manage his legal or his financial affairs. These are the letters that are referred to in the power of attorney. Did you also bring those letters with you today?
Well, no, I don't have those letters with me today. I have set up appointments with Cam's doctor and a specialist, but you know how long those things can take to get. It will be a couple of weeks before I can see both doctors and get the letters. But I would like to get this started as soon as possible, as Cam is really not able to do anything with his finances anymore. I was hoping we could start that process today.
I can certainly understand your frustration right now, Sally, but unfortunately this POA is very clear that it cannot be used without the 2 letters from the physicians. I can certainly take a copy of the power of attorney today and certify it for future use, but unfortunately I can't do anything else for you today.
Well, that's very frustrating. I would have thought that given the length of time we've been customers here and how quickly Cam has deteriorated, that it would have been possible to start using the power of attorney, as the letters will arrive shortly. I just don't know what I'm going to do until those letters can be provided. Would it be possible in the meantime to set up at least one of the accounts as a joint account so that I can pay his bills?
I'm really sorry, Sally, but that's not going to be possible either. However, if there are any emergency payments, it might be possible for us to make arrangements to send a draft or a money order directly to the company. I would have to discuss that with my manager, but is that something you'd like me to look into for you?
Oh, no, I don't think that will be necessary at this time. I can probably manage until the letters arrive, and then I can make the accounts joint, and then we'll settle everything.
I'm glad to hear that you can manage until then, Sally. I know this can be really frustrating. However, I should point out to you that when you do have the letters in place to activate this power of attorney, it won't be possible to make Cam's accounts joint with you. By law, a power of attorney does not allow an attorney to make the donor's accounts joint. But please don't let that worry you. Everything that you need to do to manage Cam's finances can be done by the power of attorney alone.
Well, that seems ridiculous to me. I was told that the power of attorney gave me complete authority over all of Cam's finances, and it would be easier for me to handle all of this using joint bank accounts. Are you sure I can't make the accounts joint? My friend told me she used her power of attorney to make her accounts joint with her husband.
Yes, I am sure, Sally. In fact, new legislation was passed in BC in 2011, which emphasizes that a power of attorney cannot be used for this purpose. I suppose it's possible that your friend was able to do this in the past, as the legislation was not as clear, although even then it was not actually allowed. I am so glad, though, that your power of attorney was prepared by your lawyer, as I know she is going to be able to confirm this for you.
Well, this is very frustrating. I will check back with my lawyer, and I'll bring the letters from the doctors as soon as they arrive. Did you want to take a copy of my power of attorney while I have it here today?
Yes, thank you. I will do that, Sally. When you have the letters from the doctors, why don't you call ahead and make an appointment with me, and then I can take care of everything with you.
Thank you, Sarah. I'll do that.
Thank you.
Financial institutions prefer to deal with powers of attorney that have been prepared by a lawyer. They can feel much more confident that the power of attorney has been properly executed and that all of the parties involved in the power of attorney understand what the attorney can and cannot do. Financial institutions must be very careful regarding the use of a power of attorney, or they can be sued. This is also the best and often only way that banks can protect the interests of a donor like Cam when he or she can no longer protect their own interests.
Sometime later, after Cam and Sally's visit to the lawyer, Sally feels that she can no longer cope with Cam by herself. She calls the Alzheimer Society of BC for some support and education.
Can you please tell me my options?
Sally, you and Cam could hire a private nurse-on-call care provider and may also wish to contact the health authority to see what level of support they are able to provide.
Sally needs much more help at home than the health authority is able to provide for her. In addition to Cam's personal care needs, Sally feels that Cam requires a general level of company and supervision beyond what she can supply on her own. She and Cam also need help with non-care services such as housekeeping and meal preparation. Sally calls a nurse-on-call service, and they arrange to provide the support that Cam and Sally need. It is expensive, but Sally, using the power of attorney, uses Cam's money to pay for that. But she worries about what will happen when this runs out. The nurse-on-call service cannot provide one consistent caregiver, and having one strange person after another coming into the house is unsettling to Cam.
No.
Furthermore,
No.
some of the workers are of different backgrounds to either Sally or Cam. Cam is reacting very badly to them, refusing to let them touch him and making unpleasant comments. Sally asked the service if they could ensure that the home support workers have the same ethnic background as her and Cam. The service says no, they cannot do that. Sally decides to hire a private live-in housekeeper caregiver. Sally's niece, Mary, has recently graduated from high school and is at loose ends, so Sally decides she would be perfect. Cam is familiar with her, and he has always liked her. Sally pays Mary's wages and living expenses from Cam's accounts, accessed by using the power of attorney. At the same time, Sally carries out extensive renovations to the house, redoing the kitchen, adding a sunroom, and creating a granny flat downstairs for Mary to live in. It is all paid for out of Cam's money through the power of attorney. Cam and Sally own the house as joint tenants, meaning that full ownership of the house will automatically go to Sally when Cam passes away.
The following questions need to be considered carefully by Sally before using the power of attorney. First, has the power of attorney sprung? Remember that a springing enduring power of attorney works to give Sally authority over Cam's financial affairs only after Cam has lost capacity. Has this happened, and how has it been determined? Is Sally's use of the power of attorney to pay for the services of her niece, Mary, an acceptable use of the power? How might this conflict with Sally's duties as Cam's attorney? And is Sally's use of the power of attorney to pay for the renovations to the home that she shares with Cam and owns with him in joint tenancy, which means she will take full possession of the home after Cam dies, an acceptable use of the power of attorney? Why or why not?
Anne, Cam's daughter from his first marriage, comes to visit her father. She visits once every month or so. She is surprised to see the live-in caregiver and questions whether this is really necessary.
So who's paying for all of this, Sally? That's what I want to know.
Oh, Anne, your father has lots of money. You know that this is what it's for. It's all for him, Anne.
Hello?
Hello, Tom?
Anne, what's wrong? What is it?
I've just been to see Dad, and you wouldn't believe what's going on over there.
What?
Sally is spending Dad's money like there's no tomorrow. She has totally remodeled the house. She's paying her 18-year-old niece to look after Dad. I mean, it's not like she's a nurse or anything. It's a total joke. It's not like Sally needs to pay someone to look after Dad anyway. He's not that bad. She's just too lazy to do it herself. You know, after all Dad has done for her, Sally should be looking after him now that he's the one who needs her.
Did you confront her? What did she say?
You wouldn't believe what she said. She said that Dad was loaded anyway and she could spend his money however she wanted.
I knew that woman couldn't wait to pawn Dad off onto someone else. This is her golden opportunity. Get rid of Dad, but not his money. I've seen through her since day one. I'm the oldest son in the family. It's my responsibility to see that Dad's cared for properly. And that woman doesn't squander his money. Oh, at this rate, there'll be nothing left when he really does need care. I won't stand for this. If Sally doesn't want to look after Dad, I'll bring him here to live with me and Kim and the kids. That's the way it should be anyway, especially in our culture.
Tom goes over to his dad's house. Cam hasn't seen Tom for many years, does not recognize him, and is agitated by Tom's insistence that Cam come to live with him. Cam is very fearful and cries out. Sally tells Tom to leave, and finally, Tom does.
Mary, I'm at the airport. I won't be back from Palm Springs until Thursday. Oh, yes, I'm sorry about the short notice. I just had to get away, or I thought I'd lose it. Listen, do not let Cam's kids into the house. Yes, that's right, Tom and Anne. It upsets Cam terribly. You tell them that I'm Cam's representative and I have the authority under the law, the representation agreement. I have the authority to say who can see Cam and who can't. Okay, Mary, see you soon.
Cam's children, Tom and Anne, have a family meeting. Tom feels strongly that he should become Cam's legal guardian. The situation has become intolerable. The siblings have made an appointment with a lawyer, Ms. Rod, to see what they can do.
Tom, if you want to be appointed as your dad's legal guardian, you will need to bring an application under the Patients' Property Act. Cam will need to be declared mentally incapable. And Tom, you will need to ask the court to be appointed as your dad's committee, guardian of person, finances, or both.
That's what we want. That's what we want, Ms. Rod.
Well, Tom, you do need to know that Sally can contest the application. You need to know that. It will be up to the court to decide who would be the best guardian for your dad. It could get quite expensive, too. Have you considered mediation? Some families find that mediation works quite well in these kinds of disagreements. It can be settled through mediation without having to go to court.
Mediation. You don't know Sally.
Well, hold on a minute now, Tom. We might try mediation. I mean, we've got nothing to lose. If we can resolve this issue without having to go to court, that might be the best answer all the way around.
All right, I'll try mediation, but don't get your hopes up.
What would be the possible benefits for Cam's children, for Cam, and for Sally of proceeding with mediation at this point? What are the potential drawbacks? From Cam's perspective, how would this process be preferable to, or less preferable than, a proceeding brought by Cam's family under the Patients' Property Act? What are some of the ethical issues raised by mediation in this context?
Soon after Tom and Anne's meeting with Miss Rod, Sally feels that Cam can no longer live at home. Mary will no longer work as a caregiver for Cam. The demanding 24-hour job is too difficult for the 18-year-old. Sally's daughter Kate left for graduate school in Toronto 6 months ago, and given the strained relations, Sally feels she cannot ask Tom or Anne, Cam's children, for help. Using her authority under the Section 9 Representation Agreement, Sally decides that Cam will move into Heath Place, a residential care facility. After moving to the care facility, Cam has a bad fall and fractures his hip. He is transferred to the hospital where his recovery is complicated by pneumonia and swallowing difficulties. Cam's doctor tells Sally that Cam is nearing the end of his life. They agree that a palliative approach would have been what Cam wanted. Cam had spoken about the importance of being relaxed and comfortable at the end of his life, rather than pushing on with treatments and procedures. Sally's daughter Kate is back from Toronto on a visit. When she learns of Cam's state, she calls Cam's daughter Anne to let her know that her dad is very ill. Kate is uncomfortable that her mother is excluding Cam's children in what may well be the final days of his illness. Tom and Anne visit their dad at the hospital. They're shocked at his condition.
What the devil is going on here? Who's in charge? Who's looking after Dad? Are you in charge?
I am Dr. Aziz. I understand that you have some questions and concerns about your dad. He's receiving palliative care, and there is no medical intervention authorized at this point.
Authorized? Authorized by whom?
I understand your father's wife, Sally, is your dad's representative. She has authorized palliative measures only.
That's not up to Sally. It's not up to you. What goes on with Dad is up to me. I'm the oldest son in the family. Not up to you, not up to Anne. Me. That's the way it is in our culture.
What happens next will depend on the kinds of legal arrangements that were made by Cam and Sally through their lawyer, Ms. Cohn, at the beginning of our story.
In this scenario, Cam and Sally executed a non-standard representation agreement in Ms. Cohn's office. This agreement gives Sally the authority to make end-of-life decisions on behalf of Cam. If Cam and Sally had executed a standard representation agreement, if Cam's dementia had progressed to the point that Cam was unable to make a non-standard representation agreement, for example, Sally would not be empowered to make end-of-life decisions on behalf of Cam. No representation agreement, but an advance directive. The instructions set out in Cam's advance directive will need to be followed, subject to certain exceptions. If the healthcare provider believes that the patient might substantially benefit from significant changes in medical knowledge, practices, or technology made after the advance directive was executed, or if it can be shown that the patient's wishes, values, or beliefs have changed since the time the advance directive was written. No representation agreement and no advance directive. If Cam and Sally had decided not to proceed with the representation agreement, Sally could act as Cam's temporary substitute decision maker under the hierarchy set out in the Healthcare Consent and Care Facility Admission Act, known as the HCCA. The HCCA includes a list of those who can make health decisions on Cam's behalf if Cam becomes incapable of making those decisions for himself. At the top of the hierarchy is Cam's spouse, in this case Sally. Next, his adult children, then his siblings, and then other relatives as listed in the Act. This list of persons is referred to as a hierarchy because the top person on the list, Sally, as spouse in our example, is the one who makes the decision. The next person or persons on the list, Cam's adult children in our example, have decision-making authority only if there is no spouse or if the spouse is unavailable. Temporary substitute decision makers are now able to make end-of-life decisions in the absence of previously expressed wishes or instructions. But the decision must be made in the best interests of the patient. We need to consider whether it is right to exclude Tom and Anne from the decision-making process at this stage, regardless of what the law dictates. Should Tom, Anne, and Cam's culture as Chinese Canadians, a culture in which Tom, as the eldest son, should be accorded a significant decision-making role, be taken into account? Despite the legal framework, which clearly prioritizes Sally, what steps could be taken at this point, if any, and by whom, to include Tom and Anne? And why would the attempt to do this be worthwhile?